All right. So, welcome everyone to our third webinar in our Artviz Network Demand the Impossible webinar series. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a really warm day. I hear from quite a lot of people out there as well. And yeah, today we have a really interesting speaker. So some of y'all may know him, some of y'all may not. But I would like to introduce everyone to my good friend AG Sano. He is a truly amazing person. All the times I've met him, he's been doing amazing work. He's followed the climate talks and a bunch of different projects around the world. And I'm not going to go on any further. I'll let AG speak for himself because this man, trust me, he's got 1,001 stories to tell and they're all quite amazing. So without further ado, welcome AG Sano.
Right, thanks, Amaran. And hello, everyone. If you hear me perfectly, can you do a thumbs up sign? Okay, good. So I'm AG. I'm probably in the hottest city right now amongst us. So hot here in Manila. I live in Quezon City, the biggest city in Metro Manila. And earlier, before we started, I was telling Amalan that this is the hot spot of COVID-19 in the Philippines. We have the most cases here, so it's really not advisable to go out. So I've been spending a lot of time inside my studio. Right now, I'm here in my studio. That's my humpback whale at the back. And I actually ended up painting almost every wall. And now I'm working on the ceiling as well, right there. Yeah, that's what happens when you leave an artist inside an enclosed space for 2 months. Yeah. So yeah, I've met Malen several times mostly in artivist movements in climate COPs. I've been attending the COP since 2015, and I've been active doing climate activist work. Climate issues is really close to the heart of Filipinos since we are one of the epicenters of climate justice. And by saying that, I'd like to share also that I have my own climate change story. Since I know a lot of people have been impacted by this, and it's one of my driving forces. One of the driving forces of why I do artivism. Okay, now this is the first time I'm going to share anything on Zoom, although I've been doing some Zoom sessions the past 2 months. So I'm gonna attempt to show you some. Okay, let me see if this works. Okay, just quickly. Okay, can everyone see this line drawing of a shark? Yes, all right. So this is not my drawing. Okay, I just found this on Google. But every time I give a presentation, I show this picture because this is almost exactly how my first drawing looked like, and that was many decades ago. I was 10 years old when I remember consciously drawing anything. I mean, when we're younger, when toddlers, we could. I mean, I'm sure we did some doodles on on walls that made our parents angry, but consciously drawing anything. Okay, started when I was 10, and it was my seatmate who taught me how to do it. It was a random subject. So I asked my seatmate to teach me how to draw, and he asked me to get a book from my bag. And incidentally, it was a science textbook. And when I opened it, it was a drawing of a shark. So he told me just get a pen or pencil, get your notebook, start with any point of the drawing, follow the lines with your eyes, and then move your hands as you follow the lines with your eyes. So it turned out nice. Turned out to be a nice drawing of a shark, almost like this. And since then, I never stopped making art. Okay, it led drawing the shark led to me joining the art club of the batch, leading to me getting the award that year, and leading to my mom being so proud of me, enrolling me in a summer art workshop. And then from then on, I just kept on drawing and drawing. Um, in college, I wanted to take up fine arts, but my mentor told me if I go into the the College of Fine Arts, he will be my teacher and he will just teach me everything he already taught me. So he said, just follow your dream of becoming an architect. So that's what I did. I became an architect. But I don't need to talk about that much. So after throwing that shark, I never thought that several years later I'd end up doing shark conservation. I'd like to show you this photo. Wait, let's see. Okay, this is a photo of me in one of my undercover uh, missions. I used to go around the Philippines, the extreme north and south of the Philippines, pretending to be a tourist, taking pictures of sharks finning. Back then, shark conservation was not that well known. So some of the leading shark conservationists in the Philippines told me to back off a little bit because it might be dangerous for me, because I was working as an individual and not as a part of a big organization. Yeah, so so I didn't know that first first artwork that I did in my life consciously would be a premonition for things to come. Okay. Anyway, I mentioned I took photographs everywhere, and yeah, it began. My conservation work, my work for Mother Nature began with my father's old camera right there. Back in '99, I applied as a photographer for WWF, and I was accepted in the first ever humpback whale mission in the Philippines. These are some of my photographs, and that introduced me to conservation work. It introduced me to, uh, Mother Nature. So I went on to become part of this team for 2 decades now. And these are some of the scientific uh, photographs or missions that we did. So we were documenting the whale flukes, and these are found in the northernmost part of the Philippines. That's the Philippines on the lower part of the screen, and at the extreme north, that's where we found out that there were humpback whales going to the Philippines. And before the study in '99, there's no body of knowledge, scientific body of knowledge anywhere in the world that says humpback whales migrate to the Philippines. So it was a pioneering research. So why am I saying these things? Because being part of this conservation work led me to founding the street art crew called Dolphins Love Freedom. There you go. Back in 2007, I was actually working in Disney in Florida, and then while watching CNN news in the evening before work, I saw this news clip of two Hollywood actresses, these Hayden Panettiere and Isabel Lucas, an Australian actress. I saw the news where they were trying to protect a pod of, I think, pilot whales in a place called Taiji in Japan. And then eventually the news clip showed that they were sent away by the fisher folks, and all the dolphins in that pod were killed and slaughtered. And that opened my eyes to going back to the Philippines and doing conservation work again. And in 2010, I saw this movie called The Cove. Turned out the news clip back in 2007 was part of the documentary, and that led me to that, like I said, to start the street art movement called Dolphins Love Freedom. These are some of the scenes in the movie. That's Richard O'Barry, famous dolphin trainer back in the 60s, I think. And then he became a whistleblower to the industry, saying that captivity is really not a good thing. And then he was able to connect the dolphin slaughters, to the captive industry. Okay, so right after watching the movie, like the very next morning, I went to paint a wall honoring the dolphins that are slaughtered in Japan. And then I posted this on Facebook, that we will paint one dolphin for every dolphin captured in Japan. And it turns out they have a quota of about 23,000 a year. So that led my team into painting thousands and thousands of dolphins. And May is part of that team. Okay, so this is the Philippine map. We have painted all over the Philippines, and eventually we were invited to conduct activist sessions in different parts of the world to promote awareness about conservation work, especially dolphins. Yeah, and then so we ended up painting about I think maybe 400, between 400 and 500 walls. So it's became a became a community type of art where we draw a lot of dolphins, and then we allow people from all walks of life to paint with us. Yes, and until we were able to match the number of captured dolphins in Japan. Okay, now going to what I mentioned earlier about climate journey. Okay, so in the Philippines, we encounter an average of about 20 to 22 storms per year, or weather disturbances. That's a lot for for any human being. And I mentioned here that it's a fact that I've been through more than 800 of these storms. I met people in Europe who have never encountered a single storm in their lives. So knowing that I have gone through about 800 in my life, it blows their mind, And I tell them that this is the normal thing that we go through in the Philippines. But the problem is that it's getting the bigger problem is because of climate change getting more violent. And in fact, a few days ago, I think 3 days ago, a lot of houses were destroyed. Some people lost their lives in the eastern part of the Philippines because we were hit by a storm that's 240 kilometers per hour in strength, in power, in the middle of summer. And that's unheard of. And it's crazy. And in 2013, most of you might have heard about Super Typhoon Haiyan. We call it Yolanda here in the Philippines. Super Typhoon Haiyan is the strongest typhoon that ever hit land in the recorded history of humanity. And I was there before, during, and after. And I ended up being part of the cadaver retrieval team. Okay? So we were gathering dead bodies all over the town. It's my father's hometown, actually. And you see here on the truck are a few pieces of body bags. To be exact, there were 12 pieces of body bags that my team used to gather like hundreds of dead bodies. So how can you do that? It was a crazy experience for me because we ended up recycling or reusing the bag. Sometimes we would fit in 4 dead bodies of children in one bag. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this is what we see, this is what we experience, this is what we encounter as a result of the storms getting more violent and more extreme. And these are not normal stuff that any human beings can witness. And that's why I need to say this. I need to tell this as a part of my story to other people around the world. And I ended up going to a lot of conferences, a lot of meetings, gatherings all over the world, especially in Europe, to tell my story. And just like what I did for the dolphins, I thought I think art can be a best way to communicate, especially if that's your skill, that's what you're good at. And that's how I met also a lot of artists from all over the world. Okay, this picture is a screenshot from a news report 3 weeks after the storm. Okay, 3 weeks after the storm, we were still looking for that little baby, that little toddler in the inset. This is the family of one of my best friends in that area in Tacloban City. They all perished during the typhoon. We were just together the night before. I actually went to Tacloban City that time to visit them, and they were all killed. Also, my friend's father and mother were killed, and that's why I told myself I need to do something about this. There's no turning back. And incidentally, on that same occasion, on the same day when I found out that they were all killed, my brother, who used to be the lead climate negotiator of the Philippines, was in the COP. The COP was happening that time in Warsaw, Poland, and he was given the floor, in the plenary to talk about what happened to the Philippines and to call on all the nations to come together and help out. And then that became a strong speech, he became a strong voice from the global South in pushing for climate justice. And in fact, if you are familiar with the term loss and damage in the talks, that came about because of that speech. It became a rallying call. Okay. So after his stint as an ambassador for the climate summit, he decided to step down from his diplomat position and become an activist once again. And 2015, together with the other activists from the Philippines, we decided to do a long walk patterned after what Mahatma Gandhi did in his time for the Salt March. But we walked from Manila, from what we call the Kilometer Zero of the Philippines, all the way to Tacloban City. There were 12 of us who walked all the way, and we had a lot of people joining during weekends. But then at the end of the walk, there were thousands and thousands of people behind us crossing through Tacloban City on the exact first anniversary of the destruction of Super Typhoon Haiyan. And people in the city asked us to bring their voices to the COP, to the world stage, since they knew my brother was a diplomat. But he said, I'm not part of the government anymore. I'm not the negotiator. But we will still continue this fighting for climate justice and to make the call stronger. So we started what we call the People's Pilgrimage, where we walked thousands of kilometers in Europe to go through different communities and connect with communities until we reach the venue of the COP. In this case, in 2015, before this in Paris. So we wanted to go there to be part of the rallying call in the streets to forge the Paris Agreement. So we crossed through Italy, had to cross through Switzerland because we needed to meet a big community in Switzerland. And then we went back on course, walked through France until we reached Paris. And that's where we met indigenous people from all over the world. This is a picture on the day when we had a rally, a chain rally, where because there was martial law that time, we couldn't do big gatherings. So what we did was we lined up together side by side, and I think more than 10,000 people lined up together. We stood, some Filipinos stood with the indigenous people of Africa. And then right there also in one of the major venues for popular venue for the youth gatherings and art gathering, we painted a portrait of my friend who died in Tacloban City, and that's Agit. His name is Agit, and he's an artist. He's a musician. He's a tattoo artist and a lover of the indigenous culture of the Philippines. We offer this tribute not just to Agit, not just to his family, but also to all the vulnerable communities around the world fighting for survival and for climate justice. And this portrait represented them. I think more than 50 artivists from all over the world helped us finish this mural in Paris. Most of them we just met in the conference, in the conference venue. We found out about this. We were covered by Democracy Now! And some other amazing independent media, social media. And then yes, more than 50 artists from all over the world, from North America, from South America, from Europe, of course, and Asia. They came to help out and finish this mural for climate justice. And we didn't end there. We kept on walking and walking, and then we found out as we were walking across Europe in communities that there are solutions being done um, in the community level, and we learned a lot. And we also learned that conversation is important. That's why I think if there's something really, really good that's coming out of these lockdowns, is that people are conversing once again. It may be virtual. We might not be side by side with each other, but yes, conversations are becoming uh, uh, more often nowadays among people among families, among networks. Yeah. So my challenge is not just for artists. I always say that if I have a climate change journey, what should be yours? Okay, what's yours? Each individual person is impacted in one way or another. So what I did was I used my art to express activism. So my challenge is for anyone else who have their own skill sets, their own professions. How can you use what you have, to advance the fight for climate justice? Okay, so that's my presentation. I have a lot more of other artworks that I didn't show yet. Maybe it would be nice to hear some words from you as well. Uh, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to to answer them if I can.
All right, awesome.
All right.
Before we open up to the floor for questions and also for discussion, just a couple of things wanted to ask you as well, a couple of questions we had beforehand. One is, the first question is, like, AG, you've had a lot of experience working with communities around the world, locally in the Philippines as well. Is there one thing that you could share with us in what works, no matter what country? Because sometimes when people, especially artists or activists, especially when they go into different communities, a lot of times it's seen again as another dominating power coming into a community, telling them what to do. So you've had a lot of successful work with communities. How have you done that? Like what has been one like motivator, or what has been one easy way to that you could share with everyone?
I think the answer is already in your question. Especially in third world countries, when I go to communities, I often hear from the elders that maybe when NGOs started going there in the 80s, early 90s, the usual practice back then was a white person would come in and tell them what to do. Okay, that was before, and now of course NGOs have learned a lot from experiences in the past decades, and that's what we try to do. We try to eliminate the mentality that we come in as saviors, as messiahs, because that's not really true. I mean, we go to communities and share what we have and tell them what we know, but then we give them the freedom to express themselves as well. Now, it's totally different when we go there as scientists, as researchers, from going there as artists. Okay, art is actually a lot easier to share with communities, because the truth is there are a lot of people, especially from the youth, who are so much interested in art, not necessarily the issues or the message, but in art as a form uh, of lifestyle. You'd be surprised to meet a lot of youngsters, sometimes elementary students who know a lot about art because they learned from the internet. It's totally different now from, let's say, 10 or 12 or 15 years ago, when we go to communities and then you would meet high school students who have never seen an art gallery in their lives. And you will see communities who never had an art mentor in their entire lives. But now, mentors don't need to be in the form of human beings. They have access to the internet, and they see a lot of artworks, a lot of different styles to which they gravitate to, and then they express it uh, in their own versions. Okay, so when we go to communities, it's a two-way thing. We share what we know, and then we ask them what they feel. For example, when you talk about, when we walk from Manila to Tacloban City, there's this very remote place. It's a port area in the middle part of the Philippines. You don't have galleries there. You don't have museums. Um, but people shared the same sentiment about how they suffer in terms of typhoons. Okay, they have houses being destroyed when there's a super typhoon, like almost every year. They get flooded. Okay, they have illegal loggers. All these things resonate not just in their community, but to us also as artivists. And that's where we find the common denominator. Okay? We talk about the same thing, and then that's where we find the common space, and from there we take off into finding out what message they intend to paint on the wall, or to what forms and images comes to mind when they want to talk about uh, climate justice, or if not climate justice, about nature. Okay, so we find the common ground first, and then we let them express themselves. We never go there and act as if we are saviors going into their community. We are masters of the art. No, we don't do that. I always have the intention to share something special, okay, and we try to make it positive. I want to share this. I remember going to a community. It's an island community, a small island in the western side of the Philippines. Eastern side of the Philippines. It's an amazing place, almost like paradise. But there's a community who encountered a bunch of goons, like armed men, who murdered four of their farmers. Okay, they're farmers, and it was a terrible thing to happen in such a quiet community, a paradise actually. And then they went there to help. I went there to give an art therapy session to the community using mural as the form of art, because when you do community murals, you can involve uh, as many people as possible. Okay, and the community was totally terrified with what happened. They didn't know what to do. Every single night, they fear for their lives because the armed men might come back. Okay, so I didn't go there to preach to them, but I went there as a friend, as a stranger who's willing to share something I know that could be of help to them. And so we conducted the mural session. They had a long retaining wall near the coast, near the fishing area, and then I was really surprised because people responded very, very well to the activity. Um, Elders came, the toddlers even came to help us out, and even the policemen who were sent there to protect the people in that time, during that time, even helped out. It was a very beautiful sight to see, where everyone gravitated to the mural, to the wall, to the activity, uh, and it's almost as if I was invisible, and that was a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what most frontline activists want, is to make sure when it comes to uh, someone speaking up, it's them talking about their issues that they are facing and sharing their stories and getting involved. And yeah, I think it's a very important thing to always remember. And another question we have just before we go to opening questions to our participants. You've told us a little bit about your dolphin project with different communities in the Philippines. Recently, you painted a giant mural with for the frontline communities facing COVID-19. How do you see like these projects like being different? Like what you did in the past before COVID, and now with everything going on, you still painted a mural which was amazing. Like maybe can you like share with us how like a little bit of both?
Okay. All right. I think art is evolving. It has evolved over time, and just as art evolves, I think our message and our activism also evolves in response to what the times call. Not just because I'm known, or not just because my advocacy is for the environment. That means I would just stick to it and not be responsive to other issues of the times. Okay, that's why especially when we have so much hands in our hands, so much time, sir, so much time in our hands right now, because of the lockdown, we get to feel. That's what artists are good at, to be sensitive, to feel the pulse of the times, the pulse of the community, the pulse of the world. And I don't think the evolution of my murals, from dolphins to whales to even peace murals, and now I painted for the frontliners, I think it's the same message, which is to be there for humanity, to be there for each other, to be there for nature, okay? Being sensitive to the things that needs caring is almost always in the hearts of artists. Yeah. Then this is I was also inspired to see a lot of uh, art that came about to honor frontliners all over the world. So it's not just in the Philippines or Southeast Asia. I've seen some street art in the UK honoring NHS personnel. Even Banksy came up with a very simple but amazing piece of art that he sent to one of the hospitals. And these are the things that make that inspire people. Okay? Our frontliners don't just need tributes, but they need to be inspired, and they need to be energized as well to continue the fight in the front lines. And those are the calls that I hear from around the world. So I responded to that call, and I wanted to offer what I have and what I know, what I can do, to at least contribute to the tribute and the inspiration for these people who are doing everything to keep us safe. We owe it to them. We owe a lot to them, and it's probably the least that artists can do is to offer such tributes using their skills. And I'm very happy to say that a lot of people were able to see the artwork. Enough people to spread to their networks of frontliners. And so far, my doctor friends, especially who are in the front lines, saw the big mural that we did here in my city, and it's given them a lot of positivity. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think in like evolving times and everything, we definitely need to see where focus tends to be. And yeah, I think it really is amazing, like seeing the artwork like that out there. It's huge as well, like really, really big. Yeah, like for those of y'all who want to know what we're talking about, I pasted the link in the chat. And it's this huge mural that AG painted. You finished it 2 days ago, yes, AG?
2 days ago, right? It's a 100-foot mural of a superhero doctor. Yeah, floating in the air.
All right. Okay, so now we'll open it out to everyone. If you have a question, you can either type it out in the chat box or you can ask directly. If you have something to share as well in relation to this, please do go ahead. So yeah, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to ask AG?
No math questions, please.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions from the chat, so I want to send them directly to me. Okay, AG, your work in the Philippines, does it? Wait, I don't understand. Okay, your work in the Philippines is very different from what I've seen here in Europe. Can you explain to me how culture is related to the art that you make?
Okay, yeah, culture is a uh, very what do you call this? Places a very heavy influence on artists because artistic expressions are based on experience. So your environment, growing up, would dictate a lot about your style and about the message that you are conveying. Um, Especially on my part, I love and I embrace the indigenous cultures and the past. I like looking back to the past, and our country is uh, very rich in culture. We have countless cultures across the nation. We have 7,000 plus islands, and sometimes even in just one island, you have a dialect. When you cross the middle part of the island, it's a different language altogether. So much culture around us. And I'd like to mention also that we used to have our own script, our own handwriting, our own alphabet that was almost totally wiped out when we were colonized by Spain and America. And now there's a strong revival. If you remember the photo I showed you about Agit, my friend, the portrait in Paris that we did, around him is a Filipino script uh, that says justice in English. So uh, yeah, I'd say my work is uh, heavily dictated by my experience as a Filipino, as a uh, heavily cultural as well. Although when we go uh, to Europe, for example, and make street art, we don't deliberately make it a cultural theme, but because mostly in my murals, I don't really plan on what to do, on what to paint. I rarely draw a design, so it's almost always spontaneous and extemporaneous. I just arm myself with paint and brushes, and then when I go to the wall, as I paint my first stroke, that's when my mind works. Okay, I almost never plan out what to paint. Almost never make designs on paper to copy, and that's maybe why there's so much culture or so much difference from how Europeans would paint or would make designs. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Also, we've got a question from Dulce Blanca Punzalan. Hi, AG. What was the most challenging mural that you've done in terms of scope, materials used, changes in climate, and team dynamics?
Okay, I'd say I can easily answer that. In 2013, together with a friend who's a peace advocate, we organized painting a 4.2-kilometer mural in Manila. We call it the longest peace mural in the world. It's 4.2 kilometers. we obviously it's hard to. I mean, it takes time, takes a lot of effort and logistics to make that happen. I mean, painting 1 meter a 1 meter wall takes effort. So 4.2 kilometers is really tremendous. So the challenge in terms of weather, because the Philippines, I mean, especially Manila, you have a really crazy weather. We don't know if summer would be summer, or rainy season would be hot or wet. But anyway, the mural, it took us 3 months to finish the mural because we only worked Saturday and Sunday, and we had a total of 6,000 volunteers across 3 months, okay, spread over 3 months, and that was a big challenge in logistics and organizing. So this friend of mine, who's like I said, a peace advocate, has her own organization, and then we partnered with the owner of the wall, which was just the armed forces it's the armed forces of the Philippines headquarters. So 1,500 soldiers volunteered to paint with us. So you would rarely see soldiers without firearms, and in those 3 months, it was a nice sight to see, to have soldiers holding brushes instead of guns, and they were working together with activists. It's very rare. And then we had volunteers from all the way from Mindanao, from our friends in the communities in the conflict areas. They came over to help paint the peace mural. Okay, it was challenging, but then it was also rewarding because when you accomplish such feat, rewards your heart to know that people responded and people embraced the message of peace, and people responded to your call. Okay, not just for the message but also for the art itself. So art was also a big advocacy in this endeavor. Yeah.
Okay, I think that sounds amazing. Like that's huge to have people like army guys, activists, and yeah, amazing. Does anyone else have any questions? Yep, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, AG. That was really inspiring. Thank you. I was wondering, you touched on this a bit with talking about the murals, the one you did and the ones in the UK and things like this. But I was wondering whether, like, arts is always such a good tool to inspire people. And at the moment, we're in a context where I think people are like finding themselves quite hopeless and desperate. So like it feels like art is such a good tool to provide hope to people and inspire them and empower them again. But it's difficult to kind of imagine how we get this to our communities at the moment when everyone is kind of locked at home. So I was wondering, in addition to the murals you've been talking about and the ones you've been doing, are there any other kind of initiatives around art that you've seen or heard of since the pandemic happened that you found inspiring or helpful in terms of getting this hope to our communities?
Yes, good. That's a good question. My organization, I have an organization called Teach Peace, Build Peace movement. So, Teach Peace, Build Peace organized or scheduled a series of webinars, and part of that series was dedicated to my art sessions. And what we did was to do wellness art sessions. I taught people online. We had Facebook live sessions to teach people how to do mandala artworks because it's very therapeutic. So I've been heavily involved in art therapy also the past few years. In fact, one of the participants here, Miss Attorney Dulce, she's a lawyer and musician and artist as well. We were part of a conference in Cambridge early this year about music and art as a form of therapy. Anyway, for these sessions, I spent an hour and a half teaching people online on how to do their own mandalas and how to express themselves using the mandalas to find connection to themselves and to their environment. And then I have this friend, his name's Robert Alejandro. He's a very inspiring person. He's a cancer survivor. So he also started teaching people on how to draw, like very basic, not really a technical drawing session, but he would make really funny, interesting illustrations, and people can easily follow. And then eventually they will end up finishing with an amazing piece of art piece, and they would even surprise themselves. So it's amazing because for me, I was scheduled to do weekly sessions, like every Wednesday. But this guy, Robert, did it every single day since the day one of lockdown. And it's amazing. It's very inspiring. So every 10 o'clock in the morning, there'll be hundreds, if not thousands of people hooked on his FB live sessions. And they would spend an hour drawing with him and, spending good time. The thing about art, it goes two ways. Okay? People can be inspired by seeing art or experiencing art, hearing music, dance, anything. So they can be a witness and they can be inspired, but also they can be part of it. They can be the creators. And in Robert's sessions, they were transformed into creators. Okay, so they were they experience how to do it. You're able to produce something from their own hands, and that's part of the therapy that art can give. That's part of the wellness that art can give. If not just to be a witness, but to be the creator. Okay? And then later on, if these lockdowns are finally over, they can even exhibit their art so for other people to witness. Actually, they can also do that now by posting the products on your products on social media, and I think it's the third stage of art to be seen.
I can add, what we actually did was, sorry, this is me. What Teach Peace, Build Peace actually did was to print some of the artworks that the participants of the session posted on Facebook, and then they sent it to frontliners and also to those who were still trying, those in the hospitals who were still trying to recover from COVID. So they used it. They used it as get well soon cards or as thank you cards for the frontliners.
Right. Thank you, May. Yeah, I forgot to say that we, aside from the mandala sessions, yeah, we did a session wherein they can, I taught them how to draw themselves, like with a big hug with their arms stretched out, and Teach Peace Build Peace sent them to the COVID wards in different hospitals, because we have doctors and frontliners as volunteers in our movement as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and art, I think, is a lot of paramount towards that. A lot of people doing things like AG. I think also like one thing I found quite interesting is like the past 2 Fridays you've been painting your roof for part of your ceiling for part of a project. That's been like quite captivating to watch.
Yeah, it's I developed this thing we call performance painting, wherein you, instead of like performing as a musician or a singer or a dancer, you make an artwork as fast as you can finish one song. So we have this movement, also peace movement in Japan. There's what we call the Japan Peace March. It's been happening since 1958. Okay, so this is the 62nd year that the Japanese movement is doing 1,000-kilometer walks, okay, to commemorate the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and to call on the world to to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. So this is the first time that the march had been canceled because of the pandemic. But the Japanese peace movement didn't let the pandemic stop their spirit and their message from flowing. So they conducted this virtual peace march, wherein every Friday, um people from all over Japan would come together in a conference, and then it was broadcasted live on YouTube. And they let me paint from the start of the conference call until the end. And so the past 2 Fridays I've been painting my ceiling because my walls have been painted already. So let me open the light. See, if you see there, that's a little peace advocate waving the peace flag. And then last Friday I painted a little boy holding a peace sign and a peace flag. And then this coming Friday, I'll be painting some other parts of the ceiling until it becomes one whole piece of art. Yeah. And I'm excited about it. Sometimes I feel frustrated that I want to finish it already, but I have to discipline myself and like do it every Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff out there as well. Like, if you want to find something, like, I think power of Google, you can definitely find something out there. But yeah, does anyone have any other questions before we call us at an end to the day? Oh wait, I think there's a couple of questions here that were asked in the chat. From Rosette, they asked, "Hi AG, do you need to get permits when you do all these murals? How do you manage logistical arrangements like scaffoldings and stuff? And do you get funding for your works? And how does it work with the communities?"
Okay. So in the beginning, let me see. I have my, let's say, legal works. I also have illegal street art, but of course I don't want to talk about the illegal stuff that don't have permits. But for my projects, of course, what I did in the beginning was to ask people if I can paint their walls. I told them I want to paint dolphins on their walls, and it's kind of weird for someone to approach you and ask if they can paint dolphins on your walls. So in the beginning, nobody really responded. And if you remember, I posted on Facebook that we will paint one dolphin for every dolphin that they capture in Japan. Uh, a lot of people responded from the provinces, but in Metro Manila, nobody wanted me to paint their walls with dolphins. So what I did was I asked a friend who had a small store here in Quezon City. And then, okay, so he allowed me, we painted the wall. And I took a video of it. I edited into a stop motion animation. And then what I did was I sent it to CNN International. Just, just wishful thinking that they might be interested in the story. And lo and behold, I got an email from a CNN producer, and she said they wanted to carry my story. And then when it aired on CNN, it was like a whole week, like 7 straight days, was shown 3 times a day. And that was the beginning of the whole project, when people were sending me emails from all over the world expressing support. And then people from Manila were saying, "Okay, I have a wall." And I would get calls from strangers offering their walls. And I think from the beginning, which was 2010 until now, so for the past 10 years, maybe 95 to 98% of the people who have volunteered for me and who offered their walls are total strangers, like total strangers. And if people invite me, let's say, for example, a local government or a provincial government would invite me to conduct a mural session, of course, they would organize for me. I would just go there and then do my workshops, do my talks, and interact with the people. And then we start painting. But also, I get to see a lot of nice walls around the Philippines, and then when I see one that's really nice and big and long and tall, I just ask the heavens to give me a miracle and find a way to get access to that wall. And 100% of the time, I end up painting the walls that I want to paint. You know, like just an example. Before the lockdown on March 15, we were working on a building, a mural. It's probably a 3-meter mural around the building in Makati City, the business district. And then at the back of the building, it was a 120-foot wall, 120-foot wall, no windows, no nothing, just a plain wall, maybe 30 feet wide and 120 feet tall. Then I said, oh man, I want to paint this wall. So I just asked the building staff, can I paint this wall? I have an idea for this wall. Then they were excited. They talked about it. Like before the night ended, the big boss told me, send me a design right away. And then, yeah, before the lockdown, we were able to finish the 120-foot wall. Yeah, so it happens. And when I see a wall, I ask who owns the wall. Then I get a permit. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question. I also do illegal stuff from time to time. I mean, that's what graffiti artists do, but I make sure I don't get caught.
All right, cool.
Oh, sorry, I think I didn't answer the question about logistics. Well, if I get invited, they take care of it. But as far as funding is concerned, we never really had. I mean, the group Dolphins Love Freedom never had our own financial structure. Nothing. It's all voluntary. When we work on a project and we have leftover paints, and we keep that, we preserve that, and we use it for other projects that have no budget. Yeah. So since we have like non-stop mural paintings for the past 10 years, we have a lot of paint. So we get to volunteer our services, our skills. Let's say there's a community from the countryside or even urban communities who wants their walls to be painted. So we talk to the community leader, and then we tell them, okay, we will conduct a painting session with the youth. And they would ask, but how can we get funding for the paint? And we tell them, no, you don't need to fund the paint because we have a lot of paint. So that happens. There are times when we have a lot of paint, but there are times also when we really lack resources. But we get through, we get by, and everyone is happy.
All right. Do we have any other questions for anyone?
I have one.
Sure,
Yes.
go ahead.
Do you get any dissent from, let's say, local government if the theme of your mural goes contrary to what they want to promote, or like you're calling them out on a dirty river? Or
Yeah, I get.
Do you get any dissent from the local government? Like that?
I have, yes, but not as much as from private corporations. Yeah, usually the destroyers of natures are come more from the private corporations. But of course, I had some bad experiences with local governments. Of course, I won't mention who they are and from where they are. But yes, because also, I mean, we know that many politicians also work with corporations in, they connive in destroying the environment for profit. And of course, our message would sometimes hit them hard, and we get threatened. But that's part of being an activist. I mean, I'm lucky because I mean, compared to some of our network, our friends in the network, I mean, we know people who were murdered because of defending the environment. The Philippines is number 2 in environmentalist killings in the world, and it is part of the part of the game. And we're not surprised that happened. But if we work with the youth, of course, with kids, we try as much as possible to keep our message friendly and jolly and colorful. Yeah, but I like the question because that's a big part of reality for environmentalists, not just for like environmental defenders, but even for artists as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing, and to voice out and have what you want to say out there sometimes can be dangerous in some situations. But yeah, it is important, especially to have that work out there, no? All right, so maybe we'll take one last question if we have any before we wrap up today's session. Doesn't look like we've got any questions. So, all right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Today, I think it was a really insightful session, and thank you, AG, for talking to us.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
I hope we can see each other soon,
Yeah.
especially our Filipino friends. We can paint together soon.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so everyone, hope everyone's staying safe. And we will be having a session next week at the same time. It will be a game, a bit different from things. Yeah, but yeah, like I was saying a bit earlier, thank you again, AG, for your session today. It was really inspiring. Your stories about how you work with all these different communities really shed a lot of light and perspective into what it really means to do work with communities, do work, project, murals, and how these things actually connect and the positivity that they inspire with the communities you're working with, whether they be activists, frontliners, people in different situations. And it's been amazing. So thank you so much, AG, again.
Thank you, Amalin. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope to see you again soon, AG. I hope to see you soon as well, maybe in Glasgow, whenever that's going to be.
Yeah. Do you have a